international stuff. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of Transfer Transitions. Today we have a lot of things today for research. So if any of y'all are really interested in research, this is a really exciting day. Today we have some representatives from the Biomedical Research minor. We have Dr. Ira Clark along with Jaira Ramos. They're both here to talk about the minor and kind of give a presentation. So Dr. Clark, if you want to take away.
All right, well, thank you, Vicente. Let me just share my screen for a second here. All right, whoops. Okay, so I hope everybody can see the screen here. So I'm going to be talking about a program that we started actually all the way back in 2007. It's called the Biomedical Research minor, or the minor in Biomedical Research. As I'll describe in a minute, this is an interdepartmental minor, meaning you can come from any major. And it's a program that was initially started with some external support from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which is why you see their recognition on the lower right here. But it's fully supported by UCLA. HHMI provided some of the startup funding, and now we're completely supported by UCLA. And as I'll describe in a minute, this is a program that evolved to basically provide an entire minor curriculum. It's an interdisciplinary curriculum that helps that is centered around research and is meant to support you in your research. So before I get into describing the minor, I just want to show you pictures of a few scientists whom I admire. She's a scientist, and he is, and she is, and they are. And what do they all have in common? Well, they're all students who went through our minor and graduated. And by the way, I considered them scientists while they were in the program. And why did I, think of them that way? Well, it's because they were all doing fantastic research, and they were building knowledge. You know, the title of my presentation here is Building Knowledge Through Discovery. That's what you do when you do research. You build knowledge. So why do research in college? Well, there are many reasons. One of them is that this is what drives advances in science and medicine. And, I can't think of a more compelling time than what we're going through right now to kind of highlight the value and the need for people participating in this process. And, as many of you know, research is not, research in the laboratory is not something that just happens overnight. You don't just decide, oh, I want the answer to this problem, and I'm going to, go in, do this one experiment, and tomorrow I'll have the answer. It's a long process, and it takes time. But the other thing that I want you to kind of take away from this is you don't have to wait until you're a PhD to participate in this. You can participate in this now as a student at UCLA, as a college student. You can be part of that enterprise. The second reason to do research in college is it's a great way to learn. And the analogy that I always like to make is with cooking. You can watch all the cooking shows you want. You can read cookbooks until you're blue in the face. But if you really want to learn science, or if you really want to learn how to cook, rather, you need to get into the kitchen. You need to start chopping and slicing and dicing and frying and burning and throwing stuff out and starting over again and learning from your mistakes. And that's how you learn how to cook. And it's the same thing with science, right? You're going to learn a lot in the classroom, you're going to learn a lot from your books, but you're going to learn science in a different way when you're part of the enterprise itself. You're going to see it in a different light. And that may be getting in the lab, that may be getting out in the field. Today under COVID, a lot of it may involve something else, you know, digging deep into the literature or getting data and analyzing it. But just even being part of a research group, part of a laboratory, even if you're not physically in the laboratory, being part of that group will help you to see science in a different way than what you're going to see in the classroom. So when should you start? Our feeling is the best time to start is as soon as you can, as soon as you're ready. Now I say now, I don't necessarily mean like, you know, 4 o'clock later this afternoon. I don't necessarily even mean fall quarter if you're not ready for that. It's totally fine to say, you know what, I'm brand new on campus here. There's a lot going on. I want to take the fall quarter to get my bearings straight with all of my courses, make sure that like I've got that settled under me. And then in winter, I want to start getting involved in research. Totally cool with that. All right. There's no deadline. You don't have to do it immediately. If you feel you're ready, you can, but you know, the research is still going to be there in the winter. So I'm actually a big believer in making sure that you pace yourself. You don't take on more than you feel you can reasonably handle, because, you know, juggling a lot of things, if it's too much, you may end up, you know, dropping the ball on multiple things. And it's better to do one thing excellently than two things adequately, right? So it's fine to build and scaffold this if that feels better for you. Okay, so again, our mantra is, you know, the old way that people have thought about research, and you know, this is phasing out now, but you know, people used to think, well, you have to take cell biology, you have to take molecular biology, you have to take genetics, you have to take all of these prep courses and upper division courses even, and then once you've got that foundation, now we can put you in the laboratory and you can start doing research. And years ago, many of us in the scientific community and science education community realized, actually, that model doesn't have to be true. In fact, you can flip that around. Students can get into the lab right from the beginning before they've taken all these courses. They can do, even freshman year, they can be productive in the laboratory. And then later on, when they take all of these courses, their experience in the lab may actually help them in some of these courses. Okay, so this linear path at the top no longer is thought to be the valid or the necessary approach. It's valid, you know, you can follow this path, but you don't have to, right? And so our mantra, our model has always followed this ladder approach on the bottom. Just want to very quickly tell you about some of the faculty involved. So Utpal Banerjee, shown on the upper right here, was our founding director. And he's a professor in molecular cell and developmental biology, MCDB. He's also a Howard Hughes Medical Institute professor. So he was funded by HHMI to develop an innovative science education program. And that ultimately led to the minor. I'll show you at the end of this presentation the specific program that he developed. It's a class, but that eventually grew to become the minor. Our current director is Dr. Tracy Johnson, who's now also Dean of Life Sciences. She's on the upper left here, and she is also a professor in molecular cell and developmental biology, and she's also a Howard Hughes Medical Institute professor. So she was given funding by HHMI to develop the Pathways to Success program in science. This is a program that is geared towards first-year students right now, but it's specifically for students from populations have been underrepresented in the sciences, and really trying to foster their development as scientists through learning communities and research and so forth, but very closely tied together with the minor. And of course, you know, as director of the minor, that relationships become even closer. I'm associate director of the program. And then we've got a great instructional team, Dr. Kirsten Turlow and Dr. Amy Flewitt, and not shown here are Dr. Carrie Spratford and Dr. Diana Rigger. Some of you, I think, Reggie, you've had Dr. Flewitt as a professor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These are phenomenal instructors. They're so dedicated to teaching our students, and super excited about research and mentorship and the student community we have here. Okay, so a little bit about the program now. The program, like I said, was launched in 2007, in spring of 2007. This slide is a little bit out of date, but since then we've had well over 700 students. We're probably pushing 800 by now, who've been connected to over 250 laboratories collectively, 38 different departments at UCLA, not just in the College of Letters and Science, but also at the School of Medicine, the School of Engineering, the School of Dentistry, the School of Nursing. So our students have basically participated in research throughout the research community at UCLA. And here are a couple of our alumni from the program. And this is our website on the bottom here. I'll show that again later on, but it's biomedresearchminor.ucla.edu. All right, another point that I want to make before I go into the curriculum is, as I said at the beginning, this is not associated with any one major. So you don't have to be an MCDB major. You don't have to be even a STEM major. Students from any major can join this minor, but unlike a lot of other minors, you can't just declare it. It does require an application, and we have a minimum 3.0 GPA requirement. So I'll talk about that application a little bit later on. What is the minor going to provide for you? Well, you know, I think there are four major things that the program provides. One is training as a research scientist. So our goal is not necessarily that everybody's going to eventually pursue a career as a research scientist, but we want you to leave this program with the skills necessary to pursue that career if that's what you decide you want to do, right? So we're going to give you really intensive training as a research scientist as part of your work in the minor. One of the things I'm going to tell you in a minute is we're going to ask you to do at least 4 quarters of laboratory research as part of the curriculum. And we don't feel that it's fair to say, you have to do all these quarters of lab research. Good luck finding a lab. We'll see you in a year or so and see how you did. So if you join the minor and you're not in a lab, we will meet with you individually and help to place you in a lab. And by informed, I mean, that's coming from us. So it's coming from us, but it's working with you. So we want to work with you to find a lab that fits with your scientific interests. If you're interested in neuroscience, if you're interested in learning and memory, that's what we'll look for. You're interested in cancer biology, that's what we'll look for. But the other part is, you know, you can go and look for labs that are doing science you're interested in. It's very hard to find labs where the mentorship is really good. And we have this body of knowledge from working with all these labs over the years where we know where our students have done really well, and you know what labs are going to be really great for students. And so that's a little bit of kind of the added value that we can bring with that informed lab placement. You'll be part of a great undergraduate research community. UCLA has a fantastic undergraduate research community already. You're going to hear more about that through the Undergraduate Research Center. but the minor has its own Biomedical Research Society, which is made up of students in the minor. And so as a student in the minor, you'll be part of that Biomedical Research Society, as well as the broader undergraduate research community at UCLA. And finally, our curriculum, as you'll see in a minute, is interdisciplinary. It has both science classes and social science and humanities classes in it. So what does the curriculum look like? Our course requirements include Biomedical Research 5HB. This is I'll tell you in a little bit what this course is all about. You're going to have to do at least 4 quarters of letter-graded research. In most cases, that's going to be 199 courses, so totaling 16 units. At the end of your time, you'll write a thesis. And one of the things I want to point out is that many of your majors will give you upper division credit for letter-graded research. 2 quarters of your research for the minor can double count towards your major. So that's a little bit of overlap, so it's not as many additional units. You'll have to take a 2-unit seminar class called 193H. That's a journal club. That's where we read primary research literature each week. We talk about a paper and really kind of dissect it and pick it apart. So you learn to read research papers like a scientist. 194H is another seminar class. We meet once a week. This is one where you will put together a seminar on the research that you're doing in your lab, and you'll present it to your classmates. And you'll hear your classmates present seminars on the research they're doing. MCDB 60 is a GE course in philosophical analysis. This is a course in biomedical ethics. So this is part of that interdisciplinary curriculum I was talking about. So it's all about bioethics. If you have not fulfilled all of your GEs and you still have a GE for philosophical analysis, this can help to fulfill that. And well, it will fulfill that. So you might want to save it for this GE course. If you've fulfilled all your GEs, well, you still have to take 60, unfortunately, if you're in the minor. And finally, we require 1 upper division course in history or philosophy of science. We have over 20 different options for this, and we add new ones every year, right? So we've, it could be like history of medicine, it could be biotechnology and art, it could be community health, right? So we've got lots of different options there. Research requirements. So like I said, you're going to have to do at least 4 quarters of letter graded research. This is, in many cases, is 199. It could also be 198, which is departmental honors. Some majors like MCDB have a letter graded 196 course. As I said earlier, you can choose from labs all across the campus, but you're going to do research in 1 lab, unless there's an issue and you need to switch labs. But hopefully the goal is 1 lab. We're going to help to guide that lab choice, but we're going to work with you. You're going to have to present your research at least 1 poster session on campus. In times of COVID, these kinds of things are happening virtually. And we're a little bit flexible with this because the opportunities are not always as well. We'll see. But in the spring, it was a little unclear how many opportunities were going to be available. Although the Undergraduate Research Center still had a big virtual poster session. And at the end, you're going to have to write a senior thesis, okay? And that senior thesis, if you're doing departmental honors, like you're doing this 198 series, you'll have to write a senior thesis for that as well. We let you substitute that for your senior thesis for the minor. So there's, again, another example of overlap. Okay. If you join a lab and you're working in the lab for a year or more, there's a good chance you're going to contribute valuable data for a project. And if the lab ends up publishing that work, there's a very good chance that you'll end up as a co-author on a publication. And so we're super excited to recognize that, you know, again, this slide's a little out of date, but as of several months ago, there were well over 300 publications by our students. By now, there is probably over 250 students from the program who've been authors on a publication, and 42% of the students who graduate from this program have at least one publication from their thesis research. So again, you know, no guarantee that you end up with a publication. I'm not saying that the students, the 58% who don't have a publication didn't end up with fantastic theses. I can think of many off the top of my head who not only had beautiful theses that just didn't end up as a paper, but also who went on to join like PhD or MD PhD or MD programs at places like Stanford or Harvard or UCLA. So it's not like a paper is a make or break kind of thing. You know, publication is, it's not going to be the deciding point, but it never hurts, right? All right. So entry into the minor, like I said, is by application. And in order to apply, we require that you take one of our introductory courses. Now we have 4 options, but the most likely are going to, the most available for you are going to be the first 2. So there's Biomedical Research 5HA. I'll talk about this course in a minute. This is offered every quarter, fall, winter, and spring, as well as the summer. Biomedical Research 10H, this will be offered in fall and winter this year. MCDB 30H, I'll talk about 10H in a minute as well. MCDB 30H, this is Dr. Johnson's course, so this is primarily for first-year students, so it's not really an option for this audience today. And Honors Collegium 70A is another option that's offered once a year by Dr. Bob Goldberg. This is a great course. It's really designed a little bit more for non-science majors, but some science majors take it as well. It's all about how genetic engineering and recombinant DNA plays a role in different fields in society, medicine, agriculture, law, etc. I think this will be offered in winter. If it's not winter, it'll be spring, but it's offered once a year. And that does count towards applying for the minor. Okay, so let's talk about 5HA first. So Biomedical Research 5HA uses a process called research deconstruction. And so does 5HB. Remember, I said Biomedical Research 5HB was one of the courses required for the minor. This is kind of like the advanced version of 5HA. So Reggie, I know that you went through 5HA, you know, last winter. So maybe in the, you know, follow-up discussion, you can share your thoughts about the class.
Sure.
I'm hoping you liked it. All right. So, and this is Dr. Rafael Romero. He taught this class for years. He's now with the neuroscience program. He's their assistant director for undergraduate education. And Dr. Amy Fluid is now our instructor for the course. So how does this work? Well, again, it follows this process we call research deconstruction. We kind of developed this. We're trying to get other colleges and universities to use it now. And it basically uses a research seminar as the vehicle to teach you science and to teach you how scientific research is conducted. So, we have a big class of, 90 students. I say mostly first and second year students. That's not really true. It is accessible to first and second years, but we have a lot of third years, some fourth years as well. Fall, probably half this class will be transfer students. But we start the class with a PhD level research seminar that, in other words, we bring in one of our professors from UCLA, and that person delivers a seminar on the research being conducted by their lab. But we tell them, don't give us a special seminar for this class. You give us the same seminar that you give to your colleagues when you go visit another campus or when you go to a national conference. So that seminar that they deliver to the class is really designed for an audience of PhDs. You guys aren't PhDs, are you? I didn't think so, all right? So nobody understands a word that's being said, and that's okay. We warn you all in advance. There's gonna be a lot you don't understand. Get what you can out of it. You know, try to take some notes, but we will record this seminar and have it available on the class website. So you can review it as many times as you want. And then the instructor of the class, who's not that speaker, would be like Dr. Romero, or it would be Dr. Fluitt. I did it last winter as well when Dr. Fluitt was having a baby. The instructor breaks down that class over a series, or breaks down that seminar over a series of what we call deconstruction classes. So we have about 7 deconstruction classes. That, you know, covers one seminar. And so you learn like some of the background science, you learn, you know, how to identify the major questions, you learn the experiment, you see the experiments that were done to answer those questions, you learn some of the experimental techniques, you get to look at data, draw conclusions, you really kind of learn the science behind this project, and you become pretty expert. And to prove it to you, we invite the speaker back after this series of deconstruction classes for an hour-long question and answer session. And you guys ask the questions. And I've heard some amazing questions at these sessions. In fact, it's not unusual for our speaker to say, you know what, I get asked that question all the time when I go give this seminar to my colleagues. Or the reviewers of our last grant asked us exactly that. And I'll be honest with you, we don't know the answer to that question you've asked. It's a great question. We're working on it. This is what we think is going on. So, you know, that's just after like 7 classes, right? That's half the course. And then for the second half, we have another speaker come in, a new seminar, we do it all over again. So that's research deconstruction. That's Biomedical Research 5HA. You take this class, it's 4 units. You can apply to the minor the very same quarter that you're taking the class. And 5HB is like this, but with some extra bells and whistles. Biomedical Research 10H. This is the other class that you can take or this is another class that you can take to be eligible to apply for the minor. And this is the class that Dr. Banerjee you know, developed with his original grant from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. So this was his original HHMI professors program. So what is it? It's a 6-unit class. So it's a fair bit of work, but it's a class where you're actually doing research as part of the class. So the whole class, that whole quarter, you're participating in an authentic research project. And it uses Drosophila melanogaster, the fruit fly, as the model system. We use genetics to study problems in development. Right now, the problem that's being studied is blood development. How does blood develop? What are the genes that control that? And in particular, our instructor, who's Dr. Carrie Spratford, is studying how do tumors, how does cancer affect blood development? So she has a genetic way to induce tumors in the fly, and then she asks, what's the effect on blood development? Okay, and what are the genes that are responsible for that connection? So again, this is a class that students can take, you know, as early as their first year, but, you know, transfer students, again, are usually like half the students in the fall quarter and the winter quarter are transfer students. So you don't have to be a first-year student. You can take it as a second year, as a third year. My point is that there's no prerequisite. That's why I have this line here. Every student in the class is doing original research, okay? You're doing experiments, you're making observations that nobody in the world has made before on these specific mutant strains, these specific genes, right? Everybody is participating in one big research project the whole class is working on together, but each student is doing their own experiments towards this project. So you're all contributing to one large group project. And the goal is eventually, after several quarters, we get enough data from this project that we feel we have a story that we can write up and submit to a scientific journal for publication. And if we are successful in doing that, our motto, our not our motto, but our philosophy is, if you were a student in the class, you generated data for that paper, you should be an author on that paper. And so we've published 3 papers so far. We have another one that's been submitted. This one came out last November. You see all these authors here, 276 students are all authors on this paper in Genes, Genomes, and Genetics. Okay, and this came out last November. So again, there's no guarantee that if you're a student in 10H, there will be a paper, but that's our goal, is to eventually publish this work. And if you worked on that project, you were an author on that paper. All right, so finally, I just want to kind of go through what a timeline might look like for completing the minor. And this is just an example. It doesn't, there are going to be some variations on this, but, if you are enrolled in 5HA for the fall, then you could get started on this process right in the fall. But let's say, you're just finding out about the minor now, right? You haven't heard about this yet. You haven't had a chance to enroll in 5HA, and it's filled up for the fall. You just heard about it. So, and 10H is full as well. All right, well, maybe in the winter then you take your intro course. And you can apply to the minor during the same quarter that you're taking that introductory course. So that introductory course could be 5HA, it could be 10H. It could be 70A if it's offered in winter. And then you can apply to the minor during the winter. And let's say that you're admitted. Hooray! All right. So now, in the spring of this year, you would take the Biomedical Research 5HB course. That's the first course that you'll take in our curriculum. And we will meet with you to help place you into a lab. And, if we can get this done soon enough, maybe we can get you started in the lab in spring, but more likely you'll start in the lab in summer. And you might be able to start with a 199 in summer, but sometimes faculty would prefer that you start with SRP 99. This is a pass, no pass course. It's 2 units, it's kind of lower stakes. They get to see that you're really serious about the lab, and then they feel better about signing you onto a letter graded contract like 199. So let's say that happens, right? So you are going to do your first quarter of 199 in fall under that scenario. You'll also take our 193H course in fall. Winter, you can take maybe our MCDB 60 course. This is just an example. These can move around, by the way. But you'll take your second 199 in winter. Then in the spring, maybe you take our 194H course. You take that upper division history or philosophy of science elective. You do your third quarter of 199. You present your poster. And in summer of next year, you could take your fourth quarter of 199, write your thesis, complete the minor, and it gets added to your diploma. Okay, so this is a timeline where it can all fit, even if you are not taking the introductory course until winter. Okay, and you can meet with Jairo. He can go through other, scenarios to see what works best for your particular needs and your major and all of that. Okay, so last slide here. Our applications open in week 4. We have an application cycle every quarter. It opens in week 4. It closes at the end of week 7. So Friday of week 7, it closes. We take applications through winter of your 3rd year. We, under some situations, we will make exceptions. And again, here's our website, and you can contact me. I don't have my address here, but it's iclark@ucla.edu, or Mr. Jairo Ramos, and here's his email address here. So with that, I am going to stop my share for the moment, and I'm happy to take any questions. Sorry if it's gone on a little long here. Thank you for your attention, by the way.
I actually do have a question about the research for the minor. Does it need to be research that's done while you're admitted in the minor, or like say if you do a quarter of research and then apply, does that count towards the minor?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you asked that, Vicente. So yeah, if you have already done a 199 before joining the minor, that counts towards the minor. So you don't lose credit for any letter graded research that you've done beforehand. Or let's say you took MCDB 60 already, right? Then if you get admitted to the minor, you know, you've fulfilled the MCDB 60 requirement. You don't lose those just because they happened before you applied for the minor. The other thing I want to mention is we talked about lab placement. What if you're already in a lab and you're happy there? You're getting, you know, you're doing, you know, research and you're getting good mentorship and you're really happy with your lab. You can stay in that lab. We will not force you to move. You know, we'll help to place you in a lab if you're not in a lab. We'll help to place you in a lab if you are in one but you're not happy there and you want to move to a different one. But if you're happy in your lab, you can stay where you are, and the research that you've done doesn't disappear.
Thank you. That's a really good question. Answer.
Some of you wanted to know what research looks like in this environment, right? So a lot of it right now is remote. You know, do I think research will be virtual in the winter? Wow. I don't think anybody really knows at this point. I think there is probably a good chance that it will, unfortunately. You know, until the campus is able to open up more, I think labs are going to be reluctant to add new undergraduate students to their roster for in-lab work, but they may be happy to add students to the roster for remote work. What does remote work look like? Well, it can take a few different forms. In a lot of cases, it will be a literature review. A literature review is actually super important for doing productive research, because in order to really, in order to understand your project, you have to understand not just the like nitty-gritty specific questions, but also how does that project fit into the field? How does it relate to what other people in that field are doing? And that's something that you normally take several quarters to develop, but if you are not like spending your time in the lab doing physical experiments, you can spend a little bit more time reading papers and discussing them and thinking about like, or learning about, you know, the science behind your project. And that can be incredibly valuable so that when you do enter the lab, you can really hit the ground running. In other cases, remote work involves data analysis. So the lab might have some data that they've generated, micrographs, for instance, that images that need to be analyzed and quantified, or maybe they've done some molecular biology work where they've got a lot of quantitative data that needs to be run through statistical programs. And that takes time, you know, or maybe it's behavioral research and they've got like all of these videos of, you know, rats behaving in some like, you know, learning test. And those videos need to be analyzed and quantified and coded, right? All of that work is work that can be done remotely. Bioinformatics is another area that is entirely remote and is super important in biology today. So understanding and learning how to work with big data is, you know, that's going to be a bigger and bigger part of biology moving forward. It's already a huge part right now. And so there is an Institute for Quantitative and Computational Biology here at UCLA. QC Bio is what it's called. And they have classes workshops that they run to teach students different techniques in bioinformatics and computational analysis, including, programs like or software like Python and R, but also, how these platforms get used to analyze data from RNA sequencing or, other genomic techniques. And so that's something that, you might also end up learning through remote research. So it's going to vary from lab to lab, but it's where we are right now. And I think the trick is to leverage this to, to not just have a Band-Aid, but actually like find unique value in this weird environment and take this opportunity to do something that maybe you wouldn't have done, under the before time, right? There were a couple of questions about the library. Yes, as a student at UCLA, you have access to the library subscription to all of their journals, and you can access those remotely. You need to go to the UCLA IT website. It used to be Bruin Online or bol.ucla.edu, but that just redirects you now to the IT website, and then you need to download their VPN software. And if you sign in through the VPN, your computer will look to the world like you're signing in through a UCLA IP address. And then you have access to every journal subscription that the library has. So that comes with your tuitions. You have that UCLA subscription access. Are there a lot of psychology majors and/or transfers in the minor? Yes. So there are definitely every year several psychology and psychobiology majors, both, and a lot of transfer students. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think, I don't remember the numbers, but somewhere between 20 and 30%, I think, are transfer students. And keep in mind that that's, yeah, I mean, the fall admits for the last few years, I think, have been like half transfer students. So a lot of transfer students in the minor, and you're going to have the opportunity to meet a couple of them who just graduated from the minor later today. Research positions are generally going to be unpaid, but there are some work study positions around. You might be able to find some. But in general, they're going to be unpaid. They're going to be for academic credit instead, or volunteer basis. But you are eligible for scholarships, and the folks from the Undergraduate Research Center can tell you more about that, because they run, most of those research scholarship programs. All right, if you're admitted, how is the interview and how do they select those students to interview? So the application, so the selection for students to interview will be based on the application. The application is going to ask about some basic things like, your major and your GPA and all of that, but there's a personal statement where you will speak to your interest in research and why research is important to you and where it fits within your longer term plans, okay? And so based on that, and also based on like your performance in that introductory course, we will select a subset of students. And I have to tell you that decision is super hard. We have students every year whom we would love to interview, and we just don't have enough spots. And so if you are not admitted when you apply, you can reapply. Now, past winter of your third year, it becomes a little bit trickier because you need time to finish the program. And we just showed how applying in winter, you might just finish barely by summer after your spring, after your senior year. But if you're already in a lab, for instance, well, that can save us a quarter. And that's one of those cases where we can make exceptions, past that winter deadline. Some folks are concerned about not generating enough data for their thesis. You know what? I can't speak for the majors, for your departmental honors thesis, but as far as the minor is concerned, we totally understand that. We totally get it. We are flexible. We're not necessarily looking for a set amount of data. We know that you guys are giving your all, you're doing as much as you can. And what we care more about is your ability to describe your project, to write a scholarly introduction to your project, to articulate what were the specific aims and what were your experimental strategies and what did you do. And you know what? I mean, sometimes you might do, let's forget about COVID for a second. Let's go to the before time, right? You might have worked your tuchus off in the lab, doing all these experiments and really working hard. And you know what? Just for technical reasons, nothing was working. You just didn't get much data because it was a really technically hard project or whatever, right? Some of the reagents weren't so good, or you're just learning and you haven't mastered those techniques, all right? We don't care. We want you to describe what you did. Things didn't work, that's fine. You can have, as part of your discussion, you can have a troubleshooting section, all right? We want you to be able to describe your project. And if you can do that, we're happy, right? We're not looking for X amount of data. And this is not for publication, right? If you're trying to publish a paper in a scientific journal, then yeah, you need data, right? But for the thesis, no. I mean, for the thesis, yes, ideally we'd love to have data. We want you to present your data. We want you to be proud of it and excited about it. But if things don't work, things don't work. And if you are doing work remotely and you can't generate the data you would love to have, well, that's okay. I mean, the whole world is right there with you within that. So totally fine. Are there any questions that I've not answered? If so, please.
Yes, we have a question from the pre-survey. It says, can I participate in the minor if I'm not a STEM or MCDP major?
Yes, absolutely. So as I said earlier, we have students from all different majors in the minor. We have even had English majors or history majors. We're primarily in our faculty team primarily comes from MCDB, but we've got people coming from all sorts of different majors: neuroscience, bioengineering, physiological science, biology, psychology, and then North Science majors like and biochemistry, right? In chemistry, but also like occasional society and genetics. We definitely have some, human biology and society. But then also, occasionally history, anthropology, philosophy, etc. What are we looking for in an applicant? We are looking for people who are passionate about research. We're looking for people who are super excited about, and I'm not even saying you have to be like a cheerleader, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people where we see that commitment to research, where we see that passion for it, because this is not a 1 quarter in the lab program. As you've seen, this is going to be, a program where you're going to be doing several quarters of research, and, particularly when labs are open again, that's going to involve several hours a week in the lab, right? I mean, minimum 12 to 15 hours a week in the lab when you're doing 199 for the minor, okay? And that will creep up to the 15 to 20 hour a week range as you get more involved in your project, if you can handle that with your courses. So, if you just would like a little bit of a taste of research because you're applying, eventually to medical school and you want to have some research on your CV and but you don't really want to devote that much, well, this may not be the best program for you. If you want to go to medical school, but you know what, you like are totally into like research and discovery and you want to participate in that process, and that's like, we can see that that's personal to you, right? Then you're probably the right student for this program. And more importantly, the program is right for you, right? And that's what we're looking for, is that match. And it's like I said, it's hard. I mean, we have a limited number of slots, so we have to make some tough decisions at times. And it's one of the reasons why we do say that students can reapply, and we do take students on reapplication every quarter. And reapplication can happen more than once. So on the application, should you state a plan for your research? You do not have to plan out like the experiments of your research or anything like that. We're looking more for what are you interested in? Where does research fit within your own like personal career plan, life plan, like or college plan, right? Since the acceptance is based on a student's completion of the intro course, are the students who are applying while taking the course in winter at a disadvantage? Not at all, not at all. So you are not at a disadvantage if you apply while you're taking the introductory course. In fact, most of our applicants, with the exception of the reapplicants, will be in the middle of their introductory course when they're applying for the minor. And that's totally fine. I mean, we try to gather what we can from just seeing you in the introductory course, and how engaged you are and how much you care about it, and whether you're just kind of going through the motions or whether you seriously care about this. Okay. We feel we can kind of get that by week 7. So yeah, so again, with the plan for your research, this is much more general. I mean, in many cases, your lab placement is going to happen after you're admitted to the minor, so we can't possibly expect you to plan your research before you know what lab you're going to be in. Now, that said, if you are already in a lab, or if you've been in a lab before, you've done some research in the past, I would recommend that you talk a little bit about the research that you are doing or have done in that personal statement. Why hide that, right? Be proud of the work you've done. Let it shine, right? You should highlight. This is not just for the minors application. In general, whenever you're applying for anything, highlight your strengths. I know it's, whenever I've applied in the past, I mean, well, there's always this feeling, and I think I hope that I've gotten past this, but early on, I would have this feeling of, where I would see all of the flaws, right? I would see, oh, they're going to see this, they're going to see that I'm not strong enough at this, I'm not good enough at that. And you almost want to apologize for those kinds of things. No, don't do that, right? See the areas where you are super. I mean, you guys are all UCLA students, all right? So this is the #1. I want to emphasize this. I'm sure you've seen it, right? This is the #1 public university in the US by US News and World Report for the 4th year in a row, all right? And you've all been selected to be students here at UCLA. So you guys already, rock, all right? And you need to take that confidence, take your strengths. You all have unique strengths. Let them shine, okay? And bring that to your application, and don't worry about what may or may not be ideal, or whatever, what you feel you don't have that you wish you had. There's time later on to fill in the gaps, right? For your application, you highlight your strengths.
Thank you for that. I do have one more question that was kind of like glossed over in the chat. what can I do to make myself more competitive for the minor?
So the biggest thing that I would say is, well, there are a couple of things. One is if you are able to find a research opportunity, a research lab, while we don't require prior research experience, it is a way that can materially improve your application, because it's an opportunity for you to both show that you can be productive in the lab, but also for you to prove to yourself that you like this, right? That this is a good fit for you. The other thing I would say is, in your personal statement, be real, be authentic, be you. Talk about why research is important to you, not why research is just abstractly important for society. Okay, we all can see that, all right? And it's fine to have a sentence or two about that if you want to, talk about how it's important for society, but talk about how it's important to you. That's what we want to see. Those are the two biggest things that I can say. And then, of course, take that introductory course seriously, all right? When you're in the intro course, try to do the best you can, and get the most out of it, all right? The intro courses are great courses on their own, even if you end up not joining the minor. You can learn a lot from them. I think you'll find them really enjoyable. Yeah, if you want to apply for the minor, definitely be engaged and put as much as you can into that intro course. Any tips about getting into a lab? So I think you're going to hear more about that from the Undergraduate Research Center, but a couple of things I can say is, one, they have an undergraduate research portal that has research opportunities that are advertised, and you can also post your profile on that. So you'll hear more about that later today. It's run through, I think it's accessible through my UCLA. And the other is you can go through departmental websites and look at the descriptions of research on the individual faculties. You click on the faculty tab, click on the individual faculty names, and you can read about the research going on in their labs. And so if you find labs that are doing research that you are passionate about, then email those faculty with a copy of your CV and a cover letter or an email that explains who you are, what your interests are, why you're excited about the research that they're doing, right? And why it's a great fit for you. And I think that communication that this is a fit for me and I'm a fit for your lab, right? That's what they want to hear, that you care about the research they're doing, not that you're just looking for a lab that might have an opening. Any lab, I don't care. I will, that may be the case, but really, I think if you think about it, there are going to be some areas of research you're excited about and some you're not so excited about. And if you go through something you're not so excited about, you're not going to put the same energy into it as if it's something that you are super passionate about, where you go home or you go offline and you just can't get it out of your mind, right? And that's what you want to be working on, the stuff that you will obsess on, right? Because that makes life so much more enjoyable.
All right. Thank you again I know that we have more questions in the chat, but in the interest of time, we need to kind of, cut it, since we did request the both of you for an hour. Reggie, if you could stop the recording.